This anime is so wholesome, it's so amazing, it has that emotional charm to really reel you in those real and raw moments, but man, this show, 20 minutes feels like 3 minutes, I'll be 100% honest. And I mentioned it either last week or my first impressions, how this anime could function as like a silent movie if they wanted to, and it would probably have just as much impact as it currently does. And there's a section in this episode that just has music playing as we're watching a montage of just the Golem dad being the best waiter possible as Somali plays with her new friend, and just, you're really getting into that emotional moment, realizing that, Somali, even though she's a kid, she knows more than she lets on, and she recognizes that it feels like her father is going to leave her at some point in time, and she's not wrong, she just doesn't have the full picture. It's not that he hates her, it's more of he has no chance in hell to survive unless some wish can actually be granted. And every time we look at his face, it feels like there's a new crack, just something broken off of him. And it's a heartbreaking thing to think about, but at the same time, it's so adorable to see two very different people from two very different walks of life come together and just have this girl say, "That is my father," and he really has become her father, and he is that overprotective parent, but for very good reason. This episode had a very different feeling and charm than the past two episodes, and that's something that this show has been doing a very good job with, is freshening it up and really just letting us explore this world without any real info being dropped, but there is a surprising amount of world building to this show. And what I mean is how this show, like every so often, it will drop, say, hey, there's this legend about a flower. If you pick it and you bring it back up, you'll get a wish granted. Sure, that is some straight and narrow to the point world building and lore building, absolutely. But every time we reach a new location in this show, it just feels like the imagery, it tells us everything we need to know. We see a new creature, we see a new species that we haven't seen before, the way they live, the location that they're at. It feels like there's so much detail and thought put into every little object in this world to make it feel like it's a living and breathing environment and not just some random location of the episode. This episode was definitely a more desert setting where it's very hot, it's very humid, it's hard to walk from one location to another. You're better off getting a carriage or something to that nature, but if you are low in funds, you have to make the walk possible. And I love how when you get to this new location, once again, it's just popping off with life. Something that a lot of shows that has an idea like this, because the idea of like humans extinct, there's only one or so left. You have two unlikely pairings, the kind of like traveling a journey that's probably destined to fail. Usually what happens is a very dark undertone. Like honestly, every location you go to, humanity's extinct, the world's extinct, it's generally a lot more depressing at face value, but this show is always popping off with life, and in doing so, you get one of the most wholesome dynamics you can probably watch in anime probably all year. I'll go as far to say that. Obviously, it's not going to be the only wholesome show out there with a emotional undertone, but at the same time, it does have such a unique flair that it just pops out every single time, and you're looking at this world feeling like, I haven't seen that before. Holy shit, look at that creature, I love how it looks, is that a cross between a bunny and some other animal? Like, what is going on? And then you'll have a girl Somali just tackle people and be like, snuggle cuddle, like that's what she is, she just wants to interact with fluffy things, and when she explains what she does for fun, she'll explain how her father will run with her real fast, or he'll play hide and seek in a tree, and it's really him just being a protective guardian, making sure there's no one in the woods that is going to hurt them, or there's something coming for them, so he runs with her so she's away from danger, but to her, it's playtime. I love that. It is so adorable to see how this girl interprets things alongside pure logic, no emotion. And I love how his logic is becoming emotion in his own unique way. And I really do appreciate how Somali isn't completely oblivious to what's going on, because every time, like, she is mentioned, it's okay if it takes long, I like walking with you, he's pretty much to the point, no, we need to get money fast, and we need to get to our next objective. Obviously, we have that bird's eye view, we know why he's like this, and even if he didn't have to rush, he would still be logical and say, we need to get to our objective as soon as possible, because logic says if we stall, your identity could be exposed sooner rather than later. So I do like how she is recognizing that it actually hurts her. She cries. She's very sad that her father wants to abandon her. And it almost feels like we're going to get that conversation a lot sooner than I thought, of maybe he will explain that his lifespan is going to run out sooner than hers. I mean, that's always a topic that's interesting when you have like a parent-child, because if you really think about the first time you learned about death when you were a kid, it's something that's hard to comprehend, as if, what do you mean you're going to die before me? What do you mean, like, do I get to visit you? Like, what does that actually mean? So it's going to be interesting to see when that conversation does pop up, if we even get him this season or not. Like, what will that look like? Especially seen by when most people get that death talk, it's pretty much like, 30 years from now, 50 years from now. It's not going to be soon, but someday you're going to have to part ways with me when you're an adult. But here, you're going to have to part ways with me in less than 2 years. Like, how is that going to work? And that is going to be such an emotional conversation that I'm both excited and dreading all at the same time. Most of this episode was really just best dad being a waiter and just having Somali actually be able to play with a friend and not have playtime that's actually her being protected like what her Golem dad is always doing. And it was pretty awesome to see how well he incorporated himself into this waiter setting. And I'm glad they went with that direction, like not just having like a fumbling idiot, because even though he's logic, there would have been ways to write it as he doesn't know how to properly hold a plate or something like that. But to just see his uncanny balance and just how he made that restaurant pop like no tomorrow. And I just love to see how wholesome that is to just really recognize that if he didn't have a time limit, he could probably stay in this location and give her a good life. 100%. She would have a friend, he'd be able to provide for her, but unfortunately there is that time limit. And if he would have met her maybe 50 years ago, he probably could stay at this location. And it's heartbreaking to think about that when you realize that had there just been a sooner meetup, as if maybe he was born 50 years later than he actually was, he could give her such a great life, but that time limit is such a curse. But that curse is what's making this journey all the more engaging, because there is that threat that what if he dies on the road? Like, what is she going to do? She would just die by his side because she wouldn't know what to do. She would wander and get eaten by a creature. I mean, look at the end of the episode. If it wasn't for that wolf-looking beast using the crossbow, she would have died. And it almost feels like even then, he probably knows she's a human, so he's probably going to eat her or try to turn her in for food. Or maybe he'll be a nice guy. You never really know with these creatures. It's just so nice to see how they're really exploring this relationship, and how even though each episode is technically them traveling to a new location, meeting a new character, things like that, every episode has its own flair and charm, and this flair was most definitely the waiter kind of spin to the relationship and how Somali is recognizing that things aren't totally okay, like maybe she interpreted even last week, things like that. And I love that. I'm really excited to see where episode 4 is going to go, because on one hand, I definitely think that just based on some of the side eyes, I feel like this guy's not an idiot and probably recognized that a hood with horns probably isn't actually, a little minotaur. Maybe it's a human. And at the same time, even if he does know that, will he try to eat her? Will he try to sell her? Or will he try to protect her? I really don't know. But I mean, you definitely kind of want to judge at face value, but at the same time, you don't want to judge a book by its cover, so it'll be fun to see where they take that. But I do like this episode probably the most, I'd say. There's something about how it really pulled on your heartstrings without being, like, too sappy about it. Having a character recognize as young as her that, hey, I'm probably going to be left alone, and she doesn't actually comprehend what that means. That's an emotionally engaging plotline, and you have a very strict and very logical father who doesn't want to let this girl out of his sight. And he really is learning to be a parent, so there's going to be things that he will do or say that seems cold and just ruthless, but really is just the logical answer for a golem. And it's going to be fun to see where they take that, and just how they explored it in this episode, mixed with this almost like family dynamic with such great characters and friendships. I just thought it was the perfect episode. Like, I mean, you just look at any scene in this anime and it radiates beauty. There's this one shot that's probably my favorite shot to date in the show where this location is beautiful. It's scenic. It just has everything going to make it feel full of life. And there's a shot where it's basically like a sunset or sunrise, and it just looks so gorgeous with characters and the buildings, things like that. I love how atmospheric this show is, and how really this could be a silent film and we would be able to tell what's happening 100%. And I'm really glad that they did give us a decent amount of times of just looking at these characters with just such emotional music playing, because this show can tell you so much without even speaking a single word, and once these characters get going, it's just even better. I mean, this show is so fantastic. I definitely can say one of the biggest strengths that this show has going for it is, rather than the characters of the week feeling episodic and disposable, they actually are memorable. Like last week, I didn't want to see those characters go. Like, obviously, I feel like we're going to meet them again, but like with this week, just the restaurant of the week, things like that, like when they part ways with this family, it's actually going to be sad. Like, they're actually a memorable character. They're a memorable family. And it's not just like our Golem dad and little girl are kind of like walk and they see a new face and then they kind of move on. Like, it actually hurts, and is going to hurt the same way it will for Somali when she leaves her friend, when the golem leaves his business that he was working for. It just feels like the characters are written in such a way that they are as memorable in some ways as the central duo. And that's saying a hell of a lot, because this pairing, it steals the show, but I love how you can have such weird looking creatures that are so unworldly, but we're like, they feel so charming and human, and you don't want to see them go. You wish that every time we meet such a great face that they could just join us on the journey, but of course, you know, they can't, and sometimes relationships, they have to end sooner rather than later, and that's a really great part about this show, is that the characters aren't disposable, but rather they add to the cast in such a way that you kind of wish they could either stay with them forever, or they could join us along with the journey. And that's saying a hell of a lot, because to be able to match the wholesome aura and just the painful aura that this relationship represents, it says a hell of a lot, and the writing, once again, is just showing us how good it actually is. And just every time I watch an episode, I wish I had another 5 to consume. It's just that good, and I'm loving this parent and child relationship, and I can't wait for episode 4 next week. What did everyone think, either for fans of the source material, anime rituals like myself? What did you think of this very emotional episode, and where do you think it's going to go next week? Let me know your thoughts. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.